Welcome to another episode of the Dunn on Purpose podcast. My name is Aaron Dunn. I'm super excited to be back in the host seat after a little bit of a hiatus and break from the Dunn on Purpose podcast. We're going to talk about communication, how that applies to, business and individual life. I like to say strong communication brings about stronger community, which when you have a strong community, you build stronger company, whether that's the company that you're building or the company that you keep. And so that's kind of the foundational framework that I've used when doing this show, and I just happened to name it Done on Purpose because it just rings a little bit better. And so as I was scrolling through social media the other day, I happened upon an event called Lead on Purpose. And so that definitely inspired me to say, okay, it's time to fire up the podcast again and get my friend Scott Brown on the show to talk about this topic because it's a fun thing to talk about. And I think it's a conversation that will only grow you as an individual, grow you as a business. When you operate, when you lead on purpose, then things just tend to go together, right?
They do.
And so real quick, I do want to give a shout out to Hustle Hub. That's where we are right now. It's an awesome studio. Ryan Roberts, thank you so much as well. It's awesome to have a resource like this here in the East Texas area. And so it's great to have people doing interesting and unique and community building things.
Right.
And so wanted to give a shout out to them. So without further ado, let's do this Done on Purpose podcast with Mr. Scott Brown.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. It's great to be here today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you. So, Scott, we've been friends for a number of years, at least 5 years now.
At least, yes.
And so, how about we just start out with you just introducing yourself for those who may not know who you are.
Yeah, would love to. Yeah, I mean, one of the things for me going back, I've done as far as in leadership, in sales. I owned my own business several years ago, back in the late 90s. It was a educational supply store, actually in Kilgore, Texas. My wife had a gymnastics business, usually run about 350 kids a week through those doors. I was the marketing guy for her, as well as the business guy for her, as well as a coach for her. But I also was a real estate investor at that point in time, and I actually had a real estate holding company called Brown & Brown Investments, Inc., and that really helped me to know a little bit more about me, and how I really got into it, honestly, Aaron, was really about growing me. When I was involved in sales, that was one of the things that basically that I had learned how to do that through a course. And so, my background basically is in business. I've done sales. I've been sales managers. I've also been a missionary in Mexico for over 7 years, and came back and was a senior pastor for well over 9 years, and a coach, speaker, and trainer now with the John Maxwell Organization as an executive director with the Maxwell Organization. And that's what I do full time now, and thoroughly enjoy investing in businesses and just investing in people, and definitely investing in leaders who want to grow and become better.
Absolutely, and you do it well. I've been privileged and blessed to have Scott across the table from me, coaching me multiple times in just different areas.
Yeah.
I've seen you in public doing so. Maybe you knew I was there, maybe you didn't, but it was like it's always been great to see you, Scott. You're the same guy in front of a camera, outside of a camera, in an event, hosting an event, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad, and I consider myself fortunate to have that experience with you.
Yeah, and same here. I consider you as a friend, and definitely appreciate that, and consider that as a blessing, honestly, Aaron, definitely.
Yeah. So let's talk about the event. So
Yes.
we've got Lead on Purpose. That's what caught my eye and wanted
Yeah.
me to, get you in here and talk to you more
Yeah.
about. So I called it Done on Purpose, and purpose gets thrown around quite a bit.
It does.
I don't really mind the fact that it does get thrown around, because I think the more people talking about being purposeful, it depends on who you talk to on like how they define it, or if you look up the definition. But at the end of the day, it's doing something with intention. That's
Yeah,
kind of how
that's
I come.
it.
Like, what's the reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so let's talk about the Lead on Purpose event and what you're putting together
Yeah.
as a lunch and learn for the community here in a
Oh, by
couple
all
weeks.
means, definitely. Well, and to go back to this lead on purpose and what we were talking about 5 years ago, we had actually started doing lead on purpose at an event that we had at the Tempest Country Club,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason I started that basically was just what you just said, to be more intentional about leading. One of the hardest things to do for us, and for me, I'm going to talk about me. But one of the hardest things for me to do is to lead me.
Mm.
It's easy to lead other people, to tell them where to go and what to do and all this, but that's not really leading.
Mm.
Leading is about influence, and that's what John talks about. John Maxwell talks about leadership as influence, nothing more, nothing less. And how am I influencing people? Am I influencing them in a positive way? Am I influencing them in a negative way? And the only way that I know how to lead people is first I have to lead me. And so that's really how that understanding of lead on purpose really got started is, hey, how can we be better leaders of ourselves so that we can lead other people, lead our teams, lead our organizations, lead those within our community. And so, something I've been doing for the past 5 years is just that lead on purpose event. And so this year, what we decided to do is to do a lead on purpose lunch and learn. And that's what this is on Thursday, November the 14th. It'll be at 11:30 a.m. It'll be at the Spot, which is really to give everybody kind of an idea, if you know anything about Kilgore, it's next to Jack Ryan's Steak and Chop
Great
House.
place.
Yeah, great food. So plug this to Jack Ryan's. But we're right next door. And so I do leadership trainings there, and so that's where that will be, and I'm sure on a link there'll be some possibility of links to
Oh,
get
yeah.
your tickets.
Link below. Yeah,
Link
yeah.
below. But anyway, we're having Brandy Flanagan, who is really the first woman mayor of Gladewater, but she's also a business consultant. She's an entrepreneur. She's written a book called Making Business Fun Again, which is a great book, and Brandy also. As an entrepreneur, also as a business consultant, is part of the Small Business Development Center, which is affiliate of the SBA. And for a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs who are looking to grow their business, it's an opportunity, for her to share some ideals, some strategies, some marketing strategies, but also business strategies and leadership strategies. And so that's what she's coming to do. She's coming to bring that to the table as a resource for all of us to know really, hey, what does 2025 look like, And so we're coming right into an election here in a few days, and so we're all kind of up in the air about hey, what's fixing to happen, in 2025. And for those who may be watching this after the election, you already have an idea before we do right now. But the thing is that she's wanting to bring that in, some ideals for leadership, some ideals for opportunities that are coming about in 2025. And then, of course, I'm going to share some leadership ideals about how to help us grow better in our personal growth, which that's where it all begins, and then also within our teams and organizations.
Why do you think it's important that smaller communities, I consider it's, growing up in a town like Edgewood that I grew up in, not too far down the road, 2,000 people, 3,000 people, you've got your small businesses. There's a chamber of commerce there, right? But, it's so small.
Yeah.
And then, Kilgore's not much bigger, and Longview's not even that much bigger.
Right,
Lived in Tyler for a long time, not much bigger, but still absolutely critical.
Yes.
Why do you think it's important for small communities to have opportunities like the Lunch and Learn or these leadership events? Because a lot of people are in business, they're doing their things, they might have not ever attended an event ever, and they still have a business that's successful. So why do you think it's important to have these things or go to these things if you're a business owner that has never gone to something like this?
Yeah. No, I think it's always about how we learn. And it's always about what are new things that I can learn. We learned a lot about 2020, COVID, and so coming out of that and having to relearn some things and unlearn some things. And I think as leaders, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we're always wanting to grow. We're always looking for new opportunities. And the only way you can really do that is really to grow, is to number one, grow us, to know us, to be more aware of us, but also to be able to network, to be able to learn some things differently and how to do things differently and learn new opportunities around us. I think even more so in smaller communities. Because sometimes, in bigger cities and things of that nature, there seems to be more opportunities and more things happening. But in smaller communities, sometimes it takes a while to get to those small communities, right? Certain changes, certain things. But the great thing is when you bring in new ideals, when you bring in new people to come speak, when you read books, when you listen to podcasts, when you have an ideal of growing, when you have an ideal of learning, okay, what it does is it helps not only you, but it helps those that you come in contact with. And I think that's the key, especially when it comes to leadership, is how can I grow me to help influence and grow other people around me? And one of the things about, we all want to be significant. We all want to make our place, our hometowns, our communities much better. So how does that start? Well, that always starts with me. When there's change to be made, or there's things that we can always say, well, this needs to be, or this. Well, hang on a second. What about me? I need to make that change in me first. I need to look at me in that respect and know, hey, how can I be a part of that to be able to change my world, which is right here.
I like that. The anytime that I'm ever going to a place, if it's a big conference or even a small event, I mean, we ran into each other at the morning brew for Kilgore Chamber that they put on every month, and even just something as small as meeting for coffee with a few other people in the morning. It was like 30 people there, maybe. It fuels me to that a little bit more degree because I can see an example of someone else, succeeding. Exactly. Or I can say, oh, that person looks like me and I'm here, so I guess this is a place for me to be. And so it catches my fire. It builds me up that much more.
Right. Well, it's encouragement. And let me say this, and of course, I'm not going to preach to you, but there's a scripture, Proverbs 27:17, that iron sharpens iron. And what is it talking about? Well, when we get together and we share experiences, and I see your success, and I see, hey, Aaron had some difficulties or obstacles he had to overcome, that kind of pushes me, that kind of spurs me on to say, hey, not to say, hey, if he can do it, I can do it, but in certain respects, to say, hey, that encourages me, that helps me to become better. And I think even more so in smaller communities, as you were asking that question, is because as we see people grow, as we see people succeed in areas, it's not, oh, well, look at me. It's, hey, how can I lend a hand? I always say as leaders, we need to have the elevator principle. What's the elevator principle? That's how can I lift you up instead of push you down? And I think that as leaders, that's what we have to look at is I want to be one of those lifters. I want to be one of those individuals that help lift people up. John talks about being a river, not a reservoir. And the ideal of that, well, what's a reservoir and what's a river? Well, a reservoir really is where water flows to, but there's no outlet. It just stays. And if you've ever been around...
Oh, a reservoir.
I'm sorry. And if you've ever been around one of those, and it can sometimes have green slime on it, it can sometimes stink. There's no pushing of water out. But a river brings life to it. And there's opportunities. And that's really what, as leaders, we want to be a river, so that as we're taking things in, we're not just holding on to those things, but we're actually releasing those things to other people to influence them to become better. And I think, as you're just talking about, for small communities, that's so vital to be able to do. And that's, again, going back to the Lead on Purpose Lunch and Learn. That's what this is about. What are things that Brandy knows? What are some things that maybe I can share? And not only just us, but those individuals that you're going to be sitting at the table with, right? The networking opportunities, the coffees, the lunches that you have outside of that. The network is so key to us growing and becoming better. So why? For me? No. It's for all of us to help our teams, to help our organizations, and definitely help our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like your vibe, your tribe is like I like to say, it's like if people are going to an event, especially a Maxwell type event that you're putting together, like, okay, well, people who are interested in reading and growing, personal development, those are the people that you're going to attract most likely, or at least have a foot in the door to kind of let that open and walk through. So when talking about purpose, I kind of want to hinge on this a little bit more. Because one thing you said, as far as leadership too is leadership is influence.
Yes.
That's one of his all-time quotes.
Yes, it is.
And then we talked about, the kind of hierarchy of influence, like the positional leader. What are some of the other ones?
Yeah, so you've got 5 levels of leadership.
Yeah.
And that's what John talks about. And the first one is position. And really the position is basically a title.
Right.
Okay,
I'm
so
a manager.
You're a manager, a supervisor, and you've been given that position. But the problem with that is that if you only stay at a position, because what you've done is you've borrowed authority from someone saying, hey, now you have a title. But if you don't develop the second level of leadership, which is really that relationship, okay, that's what you want. You want a relationship with people. And if you can have a relationship with people and in the ideal, hey, I care about you. There's 3 questions. In fact, I have a book out. It's an ebook called Connect for Change. And in that, I talk about these 3 questions that everybody asks of us. Doesn't matter if it's your spouse, doesn't matter if it's your kids, doesn't matter if it's coworkers or employer, employees, customers, anybody. There's 3 questions that people are always asking. And the first one is can you help me? That's the first question that people want to know. Can you help me, Aaron? Scott, can you help me? And the ideal is that we're all looking for help. We really are, hence the reason we're talking about lead on purpose, right? It's this idea of how can we help one another. And so that is a question that everybody asks in the back of their mind. They may not verbally say that, but in the back of their mind, they're wanting to know, can you help me? The second question is do you care about me? Do you care about me as a person? Do you value me as an individual? Or do you just have an agenda? You just care about you. You care about what you want, when you want it, and how you want it. And so those 2 questions right there are very vital questions when it comes to leaders, understanding those that they are leading in their followers to say, hey, I can help you, and I do care about you. I care about your dreams. I care about your desires. I care about, what you're really wanting in life. And that's one thing I see when I go into organizations, that for managers and supervisors, many times they don't know their employees why. Why are you here? I get it. You need a paycheck. I totally understand. But really, what is the bigger why that you're here? What are you trying to accomplish in your life? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? And I a lot of times when I go into companies and I'm having one-on-ones or coaching, a lot of times I ask those employees, what is your why? Paint me that picture, whatever that picture is. I want you to describe it to the T. What is it that you're really wanting in life? I know some people, Scotty, what I really want. I want a down payment for a house. Sure. Well, great. That's a why. So let's figure out, what does that house look like? Let's go ahead and tell me 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So give me that why, right? So that's the ideal of, I care enough about you to spend time with you, to know your reasons for being here, and how can I help you obtain what you want. As leaders, if we'll have the opportunity to let people know that we care about them, our employees, and that we do want to help them, it values them. And they feel valued. Now we're being more intentional, okay, with our employees. And we're not just coming to work and you don't do your job and you go do your job and break, let's go. No, now we have a relationship, okay? The third question.
So real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
so that's the third question for the relational side.
Well, the relational side, the third question is, can I trust you? Do you care about me? Can you help me? And can I trust you, which is the foundation of every relationship, Aaron. Doesn't matter if it's spouse, doesn't matter if it's children. Definitely, in relationships with our employees, they want to know, can I trust you with my time, my energy, who I am as a person, my hopes, my dreams, my desires in life. If we can learn to answer those 3 questions as leaders with those that we're leading, our followers, what it does, again, it brings value to those individuals, and it lets them know, I'm not here to manipulate or use you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to be of a resource to you, okay? And that's the relationship that grows. So now the 5 levels of leadership is the first one.
Yeah, so positional, and then relational. And I want to stamp on that one just real quick, because can I help you? Do I care?
Do you care about me?
Do you care about me?
And can I trust you?
And so Project One Roofing's tagline is building trust in roofing one project at a time.
There you go, yeah.
And so I'll only say that because I'm wearing the shirt and I work there, but it's also so important because when you are approaching, when a homeowner or a business owner that owns a commercial property is looking for help, they are really looking for someone they can trust.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
They need somebody they can help that can help them, that does care about where their,
Mm-hmm.
what their roof is, in what condition the roof is in,
Yeah,
and what
definitely.
position those people are in, because of the roof is in, because
Yeah,
of the condition the roof is in.
correct.
And then ultimately, can I trust you to actually do a good job,
Yeah.
come back, do a good inspection, all those kind of things. So
Mm-hmm.
important. But the reason I wanted to stop there
Yeah,
was because I just feel like there's also an opportunity for those who are looking for leadership positions.
correct.
Even if you're not in a positional leadership role,
Right.
those questions you can actually ask yourself
Yeah,
as a way to become a better leader,
that's
right? So it's
exactly
like,
right.
okay, well, can I help the person that holds the keys, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
to grant me a leadership
Mm-hmm.
position?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can I help them? How can I help them?
Yeah,
Do I
yeah,
care enough to do extra work so that I can
exactly.
earn that right? And
Mm-hmm.
have I done enough to earn their trust so
Yeah,
that I can have a good
that's
conversation?
exactly right.
And so
Yeah.
it's just a different way of kind of
No, it
thinking
is.
about it, but it
Mm-hmm.
flips it, but it painting the picture that it works down from a leader to an employee, but
Exactly.
also up
It
from
works
an
up.
employee who's looking to lead.
Oh, by all means, by all means. And that's one thing that when you're looking at, if you're an employee or a manager and you have someone else you report to, whatever the case may be, you're exactly right. Those three questions are asked up and down, inside to side. It's a 360-degree leader, and that's what we should be, a 360-degree leader. Hey, how can I help my superior doing his job?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, number one, he has to know that I care. I care about doing my job, but I also care about him. I care about who he is as a person, and also the idea what you just said is that not only do I care, but I also want to help him.
Mm-hmm.
I want to help him succeed too,
Mm-hmm.
because he's going to try to
Or
help
her.
me succeed, or her. Yes, yeah, help them succeed. And then the other side of that is I want them to know that they can trust me. They can trust me with a project. They can trust me with whatever they have for me, and they can trust me to do my job, and they can trust me to go above and beyond my
Yeah.
job. So that relational is so important.
What's the next few
Well,
tiers? We don't have to dive deep
No,
into
we won't
any of them,
dive deep into those. But the next one really is about personal. It's about personal development. It's about growing your team. That's the third one. The fourth one basically is lending a hand to those around. And then the fifth one is a pinnacle. And the pinnacle leader really is the leader that's at the very, very top. And there's very few pinnacle leaders. Mother Teresa would be a pinnacle leader. Billy Graham would be a pinnacle leader. For me, it's John Maxwell because he helps so many people around the world. That's a pinnacle leader to me. So and I'm saying there are some pinnacle leaders that help within organizations, and there's individuals that we can always look back and look at and say, man, they're a pinnacle leader to me. That's who I want to follow. That's who I want to emulate. That's the individual I want to be like. And I think so. There are those. But the whole point of those 5 levels of leadership, and John actually has a book called The 5 Levels of Leadership that you can read and follow. But it's really starts off with us. I had a young guy the other day ask me, he said, Scott, one day I want to have a position. I want to be a positional leader. And I said, all right, have you already started learning? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, in order to be a leader that you want to be, you got to start today. And I think I said this even at the chamber. I said, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, it's 20 years ago. What's the second best time to plant a tree? It's today, right? And it's the same thing in our own life. It's the same thing in our own personal growth. Hey, I can't go back, and try to grow, but I can grow today, and I can start today to be that individual that I really want to become. It's really about being, doing, and having. Those are 3 things I even talk about in a couple of my mastermind groups, and the idea that basically for you and I, there's individuals, there's things that we want to be. There's people we look up to, and we say, man, I'd like to be like that person. And because sometimes we say, well, I'd like to have what that person has. Well, you got to be first. You got to be that person first. You got to be what that person is, and be the character, have the integrity, work on the self-worth, work on those things within ourselves, because it's all about inside. Okay, it always starts inside of us, and once we realize that the inside is what's most important, because what's inside actually comes out. A lot of times we're focused on the outside. And you and I both know, especially when I deal with real estate and remodeling homes. I mean, we could paint that home up, look really wonderful from the outside,
Yeah.
But if we didn't work on the inside, I'm talking about in the walls, I'm
Right.
talking about in the foundation, that house will just, within a few years, come crumbling down.
Yeah.
It would be. So it's the same thing in our own lives. We can paint the facade. We can paint the outside really nice. And sadly to say, there's a lot of people that do that. It's the outside that they're concerned about. But I want to tell you this, if you'll focus on the inside first, you focus on what's on the inside, because what's on the inside always comes out. I'm always reminded of the founder of Dan Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, Dan Cathy. This is before really we had Chick-fil-A on every
Right.
city, right?
Right.
He was approached by his board. He was approached by, of course, his inner circle, and they were wanting to grow, wanting to become better. And Dan said, listen, he said, I understand. We all want to grow. We all want to become better. But we need to start here. If we'll grow and become better inside, we become the leaders that we're supposed to be. We become really what our customers are demanding us to be. If we'll focus on the inside first, he said, what will happen is, as we grow, the customers will demand that we become bigger on the outside. And that's exactly what happened. They focused on themselves. They focused on their franchisees. They focused on the teams within their stores. And the customers said, we want more. We want more. So think about that. Did that happen overnight? No. Nothing worthwhile ever happens overnight. I can't think of a leader, a successful leader, who one day woke up and looked out across the mountaintop that he's on and said, man, how did I get here?
Yeah.
How did I get here? There's no way. No, he became an overnight success, 20 years in the making or plus. It takes time. It takes time. And for a lot of us, and I say us because as business owners and entrepreneurs, we want things now. And we live in I call it the microwave society, where we want things now,
And easy.
And easy, exactly. And for success and for growth and to become that which we really want to become, that doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes one book at a time, one lunch and learn at a time, one conference at a time, but it takes intentionality. That's the key. We've all been to conferences, and we've all been to those things. We've sat and we've taken notes. And anytime I do a conference, anytime I speak, I said, listen, first off, whatever I say today, you're welcome to write down. You're welcome to take the pictures of the screens, whatever. But I really want you to write down what comes to mind, your mind, when I'm talking, because your thoughts are what's most important. Not mine, it's your thoughts. And so if there's something that spurs you on, there's something that gives you a new ideal, write that down. That's what's important. And then go back and review that. I've been to a lot of conferences, and you have too, Aaron, where we've taken great notes, but we never went back and reviewed those notes, and we weren't intentional with following up. And so one of the things we have to do as we're learning is we need to know, where do I need to go? Where do I need to grow? So I need to be aware of that, right? I need to be aware of where I'm growing, of what I need to grow in. What are my strengths? What are my deficiencies? Where do I need to grow? Grow in those areas, be intentional to find out what those areas are and grow into. And then as I'm continuing to grow, is then to measure my growth. How do I measure my growth? Well, there's certain opportunities, just like in football or baseball, because we get the World Series going on right now. We measure the success by the ending of the scores, right? What's on the scoreboard. But for you and I, we have to measure success in our life. We have to measure, am I growing in certain areas of our life? And so if I'm intentional about growing and I'm becoming better at growing, then one of the ways that I'm going to be able to notice if I'm growing is how I respond to people. Am I reacting or responding? How people respond back to me. What's the words coming out of my mouth? What's the thoughts? Because that's where it all starts anyway. What's my mindset? Those are key areas that we can actually measure growth if we'll sit down and think about those things and write those things out. And those are just very few, but very key areas that we can measure growth in our life. And so as we continue to grow and become better, what we can do is be more intentional in those areas, intentional about growing in those areas, so that it's not for us, it's about helping others. Zig Ziglar said this a long time ago, and I love quoting this, and people get tired of me quoting it, but it's so true. He said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll always get what you want. But the key is not you getting. The key is in if you'll help others. It's giving to others. You want to be a success in life? Give to others.
Yeah.
Always put others first. Always help others. And that's the intentionality of it, putting others first.
Yeah, absolutely. So, dropping all kinds of gems, Scott. I know you would. I want to ask you this. This is
Yeah.
a question that I ask every guest, and it's a fun one. Kind of community centric, but I think it also goes to what you're talking about when you're talking about growing yourself as an individual
Mm-hmm.
and really doing a kind of an inventory of where you're wanting to grow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like it speaks to you as a character and a being. Like you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
you really have to become that
Yeah,
person
you do.
before you are recognized as that person.
Well, yeah, and to have those things,
Yeah.
you've got to become first.
So the question is the village question,
Yeah.
and it's imagine you're in somebody gives you a plot of land. Scott, I've got a plot of land for you. I want to build a community around this kind of two highways, right? Northwest, east, south, right?
Right.
And so, but to get people to this village that we're creating, we're going to put a virtue, a value on billboards that would just attract people to this area.
Yeah.
So it really speaks to community and that the
Yeah.
community values. And so I'd be curious to know what you would put on each of those 4 billboards. What word
Yeah.
or phrase would you put
Yeah.
on those to kind of attract your tribe, attract
Yeah.
those type of people that you would like to be around?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the values, right? I really do, and to become those things.
Mm-hmm.
John Maxwell, he's done transformation tables. You might have heard those before. In Longview, they have a transformation
Mm-hmm.
tables around businesses and things. And I've had the opportunity to go to the Dominican Republic and Costa Rica with John, and one without John, that I just went into a country in Costa Rica in the northern part and do transformation tables with those. And what we talked about was values. What we talked about is, hey, how do we attract those types of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how to not only just attract, but how do we grow people into that? Because it's
Right.
really what you're wanting to do. And so, one of the things that you look at is what are the values of those areas? And so if I was creating something, what values do I hold dear? And I think this is important for all of us. And I'm glad you brought this up because it's important for all of us to sit down and say, hey, what are my most important values?
Mm-hmm.
I have a sheet, and I'll answer your question in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a sheet that I do with new coaching clients, and I go through those values. And there's a list that I give, and I say, circle these values, the top 10. Okay, the top 10. So they'll circle top 10, which is hard. I mean, because there's about 50, values that they're going to go through and figure. And then after that, I say, okay, so give me the top 5. Now, what are your top 5 out of the top 10? Oh, that's hard, Scott. I don't know if I can do that. Yeah, you can do it. So they circle the top 5. And then I say, okay, now let's break it down to top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, out of those 5, out of those 5, Scott, give me the top 3. Ooh. So they'll sit there for a long time, and I think these are my top 3. And then I'll say, one more, give me the top 1.
Mm-hmm.
What's the top value? And what that does is that is intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
It presses intentionality of what is the most important thing that I need, that I hold value in my life. And so we'll go back to the question because I've done that list several times. But I'm going to tell you what's important to me, and then when I see what's important for our community. Okay, so I really do believe integrity is key. We have to have integrity. I have a good friend of mine, and you know who he is. I'm not going to mention his name, but he's very, very well off, and he does very well, and for himself. And anytime I shake his hand, he says, "Hey, come get you a handful of integrity." So because he does. He's a man that is looked up as a man of integrity, and so I have to think that has to be key to me is integrity. I think the other one is honesty. You've got to be honest. Okay. That's another value I think that people need in their life. You have to have that. I think another value that I hold, of course, is not only just the ideal of integrity and honesty, but the other ideal for me basically is, and this is something that I have to look at in me, is have discipline, discipline, and self-discipline, and because if we can have self-discipline and we can have integrity. Okay, and we can have honesty. Now we're setting up kind of a core, kind of a foundation, right? To be those people, to be, and then to do those things, to have. And then I think the fourth corner, if you're looking at that fourth corner, for me probably would be just the ideal of just having, along with integrity, is character. I think that's two different things, but they go hand in hand. They really do. And when I say that, and a lot of people say, well, that's kind of cliche, Scott. I mean, that's just, but it's not. It really is the foundation to be those things that you want to be. I've listened to Jim Rohn. I don't know if you know Jim Rohn. I love Jim Rohn. I love listening to his stuff. Of course, he's passed on, and a great motivational speaker, but just a man of just integrity, a man of honesty, a man that definitely will tell you how it is, for sure, but just high character. And he carries himself very well, you know. And so for me, if you're looking at the values that I think that even this area, Kilgore, and I think that's some of the values that many of our community has in those areas of understanding that as leaders of our community, we have to have those ideas of character and integrity and honesty, you know, in our life. And of course, definitely discipline, self-discipline. Self-discipline is one of the hardest things to do. And within that becomes accountability. And when I say accountability, a lot of times people say, well, that's like a negative word. They kind of shy away from it. I'm going, no. We all need accountability in our life. We all need someone to be accountable to, because all of us can veer or lean the opposite, the direction of having integrity and having character. And so we need that accountability, because accountability helps us to grow, helps us to go forward. That's what accountability is for. If I don't have accountability, then basically I'm going to just kind of coast. I'm going to coast backwards. And I heard this.
Yeah, they say Grant Cardone. He says flat lines always fall.
They always fall.
And so, you know, if you're going, but you're not holding yourself accountable to any higher target or a greater target, maybe an impact target, whatever, then it's more likely than not that you're going to just
go downhill.
Yeah,
it is just gravity takes effect, you know, and you never see anybody coasting uphill. They won't coast uphill. They coast downhill, but they won't coast up. And so we understand that accountability keeps me pushing, keeps me going forward. In fact, I always tag a lot of my emails, keep moving forward. Even if it's just an inch, you're still getting closer by just moving forward in that direction.
Yeah, great selection. I love it. And as I've said many times on the podcast before, each one is always different. To every guest has always got a different mix, and it's always interesting to
hear what they're going to say.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this. So talked about quite a bit, leadership and purpose and character, all this. If you imagine your sheet that you would circle, you'd have somebody else, one of your clients circle, and you know, obviously, you've highlighted the 4 or maybe 5 with accountability in there that you put on the forefront of your mind. What are some that you leave off, or I want to get to the growth opportunities that Scott Brown sees in himself? Okay, if you're open to that. Like what is one that you're like, you know, I don't want to circle this one just because I know I really need to work on it. You know what I mean? You're like, because that's the hardest thing, right? When you're looking in the mirror and you're going, oh, man, it's really easy to stay in your comfort zone. And like, you know, we hear a lot, especially in the personal development area, of like, hey, you know, you see the graphic and it's, hey, this is where growth is. It's on that, you know, where discomfort is, where risk is, where, you know, and then your comfort zone. So you can do a lot of personal development and growth and be in a good spot. But that doesn't mean you're done. You still got plenty more to expand into. Right. So what is maybe a virtue, you can take it that way, a value that you're focused on, or what is another realm kind of that you're in now that puts you into a zone of expansion where you're feeling a little risk, you're feeling a little like uneasiness because it's uncharted territory.
I don't know as far as uncharted territory, but I'll tell you what I have the most difficult with, and that is self-discipline.
So you put discipline,
but I did. It's a high value for me, but it's one of the hardest things for me to deal with because there's areas of my life I know I'm not as disciplined as I need to be into. You know, I know I need to go work out at least 3 to 5 times a week. That doesn't happen. I know I don't need that extra piece of chocolate cake. That doesn't happen. I eat that piece of chocolate cake. When I was a pastor, I did a sermon one time and I talked about temptations in our life, and our spiritual enemy knows our temptations. I said, we all have temptations. And I said, one of my greatest temptations is M&M candies, and I love peanut M&Ms, And so that was Sunday morning, and so Monday morning I come into office. I have this big thing of M&Ms from Sam's, this good friend of mine, right? Yeah. Good friend of mine. And I texted him. I said, "Get behind me, Satan." And luckily I took those M&Ms and I gave it to somebody else. I said, "I can't do this. I can't do this," especially after preaching what I just preached. I got to get this. We got to get rid of this. But I think it is for most people being self-disciplined. I did I guess it was a training years ago as a course. One of my first courses I did, I called it The Freedom of Self-Discipline. The freedom of self-discipline. Because many times we think of self-discipline as negative. And self-discipline, I don't want to be self-disciplined in this. But there's freedom in self-discipline, and the idea that basically that if I become more disciplined in those areas, that flows over into other areas of my life. It can flow over into my finances. If I'm more disciplined in saving money and investing money, if I'm more disciplined in being intentional, where that money goes, every dollar. I think it was Dave Ramsey that talked about every dollar needs a name. It needs an account to go to. It needs to be. You have to be accountable to that, and so you have to be disciplined to know that, because it's very easy. As I said, the microwave society, we want it now. Okay. Yep. Also to say I want that and go get it, instead of being intentional. How can I either do something, work a little extra, make a little extra money to pay for that, and being disciplined in that area. And for me, that's what I'm really focused on right now. I'm 56 years old. I just turned 56 last week, and I know I appreciate, and you did. I appreciate that. And so the older I get, the more I realize how important self-discipline is in my life. And again, it goes back to health. I want to live longer. I've got a 4-year-old granddaughter. I've got 3 daughters, 26, 18, and 16. My 2 youngest ones play volleyball. My oldest one is going back to school. She's got a 4-year-old I want to be there for them. I want to be there when they, for their marriage and their kids, my grandkids. And so, health is a big deal right now for me. And that's what I'm really focused on. I was an offensive lineman. I played in high school and college. Offensive linemen didn't worry about what they ate. No. We just ate, because we were going to run it off, but we were trying to gain and bulk up. And so that's always been something that I've always struggled with out of college, is my weight, and making sure that I'm exercising, not just exercise to bulk up, but I'm exercising to trim down and to stay healthy. And so eating the right foods and exercising and mentally going into that. And then for me also, just the self-discipline of continuing to read, continuing to study, continuing to write, continuing to do those things. And so on the business side, we have to be self-disciplined. In my relationship with my wife, being self-disciplined and disciplined in my relationships with her. And communication is another one. I'll hit on that one real quick. But communicating is so important in our relationships, and communicating in a way that is not just passing along information, but communicating to connect. Yeah. That is key. And so that's intentional. How do I communicate with my spouse and my kids, and communicate in a way that I'm connecting with them, not just passing along information, but I'm actually connecting with them. And it goes to, as employers, to our employees, and to our coworkers that we work with. It's all about connecting.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that. Everybody's got their own, things. Yeah. But, putting it into a frame of discipline is, I think, helpful. And then what makes me think of that, what that makes me think of is leverage points. So, I think about, okay, well, what is a high leverage thing that I could do to get me the most kind of bang for my buck, so to speak? And one thing I've kind of learned over time, too, is that if I'm undisciplined, the way I don't know if it's the brain or what, but if I'm undisciplined in one small thing, how the dominoes will fall, and they might be totally disconnected. If it's a health habit that I'm trying to do, but I do another habit, like a financial habit, for example. Yeah. So okay, well, I'll spend my $4 over here or $40 over here, but then next thing I know, I find myself eating that chocolate cake.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? Something like that. It's not. It does. It kind of breaks the dam.
It does.
And so being aware of what what are those triggering
Right.
things that kind of let the other dominoes fall?
Right.
And finding that, okay, well, if I can just stay on the path with this little thing, all these other things are much easier.
Yeah.
But I want to give you the opportunity to talk about that connection, communicating to connect,
Right.
because I relate to that as a married man myself, and you know, passing on the distinction between passing along information and
Right.
then really connecting with the heart.
Yeah.
I've seen it with working with a team
Yes.
in that regard, and on the home front of like, well, you know, hey, I said that, or I told you, or you got the email, or I'll shoot you a text, versus no, really, like, let's pause and think about what the information I'm sending is saying by the way that I'm sending it.
Correct.
Right? How am I communicating is sometimes more important than what I'm communicating.
Exactly.
So do you got a nugget, a frame? Does John Maxwell have a book about you know, that communicating to connect? How can we align our hearts with our minds, or you know, how can we communicate with more heart rather than just getting it cerebral?
Yeah, you know, of course, you know, not only am I licensed with John Maxwell, but I'm also a marriage counselor too. And as a pastor, I did a lot of marriage counseling.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, and it's pretty funny because I've done a lot of premarital counseling, but I've done postmarital counseling too. I had one couple, been married for 50 years, and they were on the brink of getting a divorce after 50 years. I'm going, why? Why? You know, you've lived with each other for 50 years. Why?
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, it all came down to communication. It came down to assumption and stories, and it came down to the lack of connecting, right? And so one of the things that, you know, when I'm talking to, and it doesn't have to be married couples. It can be friends. It can be coworkers. All of those. Communication is such a key part of our life, and it's not just the words. Again, it's how we communicate, as you just made mention, and that's even through text today, right? And we've all gotten a text and go, "Is that really what you meant?
Yeah.
Am I reading this right?"
Right.
You know. One of the things that we have to realize is that if we will learn and go back to those 3 questions I talked about at the very beginning, and we put that in our mind, how are they going to receive this when I say this? How you know, I need to let them know I care. I want to help. I care about them, and they can trust me. And so I have to be able to put this into a text or in the words that I'm about to say, in an email, whatever the case may be. And so those are always my 3 go-tos, you know, when I'm talking about, when I'm trying to connect with people, because that is the connection key, is asking ourselves, how are they going to receive this, okay? And a lot of times we engage our tongue before we engage our mind. I've been guilty of that many times, and that's when we have to go back and say, I'm sorry. So if we can kind of learn how to engage our thought, our brain first, and then our tongue, but not only just that, but also how we speak, how we come across, not just in words, but our mannerisms, our body language. And all of those are so key because we communicate every single day without words. Our eyes are always picking up. Even right now, you're picking up my communication. I'm picking up your communication. The people watching us are picking up our communication. We're communicating something all the time, and we have receptors in our eyes, our ears, our nose, all of those. You know, are receptors that are receiving communication all the time. And so, for me to connect with someone, I have to put that person front. I have to put them front and center. I have to put them and their best interests up front, not mine. Again, it goes back to others, always others. And if I can learn to do that, learn how to put other people first, okay, even in a conflict situation, I do a lot of conflict resolution in companies and businesses. I've done some workshops in conflict resolution, and the ideal basically is how do we work with each other's personalities, who they are, what they think, you know, in the situation that we find ourselves in, and realize I'm for you, I'm not against you, okay? There's a book by Jeff Henderson called For, F-O-R, For. And what he talks about in that book is how can we be for each other? If I'm for you, what does that mean? Well, I want the best for you. And if there is a conflict, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I feel tension, or hey, is there something going on, before that escalates a lot of times. And if there is something that that has happened unintentionally, didn't realize how someone had perceived something in a particular way. And see, that's the other side of that, is many times, especially in work environments, we perceive things to be when they're not actually are, when they're not actually what they are. We perceive them to be a certain way. And so that means we need to communicate to find out, hey, did you really mean to say it that way? I took it this way. Okay. My dad said this a long time ago. This is when I was married, and he said, son, I want to tell you something. He said, everyone has feelings, and it's okay to express those feelings. Why? Because we're emotional beings. We've been created with emotions. We have those. It's okay to say, hey, not to, I don't want you to be defensive, but hey, when you said this, this is how it made me feel. Or when you acted this way or did this, this is how I felt about that. Why is that important? Well, but it does. Again, it goes back to connection. If I'm able to express that openly and realize you're not going to get defensive, why? Because you're for me and I'm for you, right? Then both of us can take a step back and go, wow, I didn't realize that, and we can say those words that for many people it's very hard to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's very hard for people to say many times. But I want you to say, when you can learn to say I'm sorry and genuinely mean it and understand that, hey, we all make mistakes. Ask my wife. She knows all the mistakes I make, you know. And I've been really good about saying I'm sorry. I got really good. But
I'll just, I mean, sometimes it's easy for me to say I'm sorry.
But not for her.
Well, no, not that. I won't say that. What I'm saying is it'll be easy for me to say I'm sorry because in the moment, it's kind of like in the moment you're like, okay, I've signal bad, not good, so I'm sorry is a real quick Band-Aid.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the burn is not there.
It's not there.
Right? And so you almost have to. You really do have to I have to catch myself of saying I'm sorry before I really understand what I'm even apologizing for, right? Because it's like human nature to kind of want to go, sorry, can we retake? But you can't do that.
You can't do that. No.
But you can say I'm sorry, help me understand.
Exactly.
And then you have to do some reflection and get to a point where you can actually chat about it.
It's the awareness. And once we become aware of the situation, something wrong. There's a situation here, and now I'm aware of it. Now it's my responsibility to find out how can I help solve the problem, or how can I help listen to understand the problem? How can I go back to care about them, help them, and also build trust. And this is one of the things that a lot of times, especially with relationships, is we as leaders, and that is leadership in business, that's leadership in our marriages and our families, is as leaders, we're always depositing and hopefully depositing trust in people's trust accounts, right? What does it mean? I mean, I always want you to trust me. I'm going to do things that help you trust me. I'm going to be that person of character. I'm going to say what I intended to say in a way that is for you. And if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. Okay, I'm not going to let myself off the hook. I'm going to offer grace. I'm going to offer mercy. You can trust me. But there are times unintentionally that we withdraw trust from people's trust accounts, and that can be our spouses. And that's when we have to sit down, okay, and say, okay, so help me understand. I've said something, I've done something that has broken our connection here a little bit. And so what do I need to do to reconnect? What are some things I need to do to reconnect? And listening is key. I think, one of the things we, as husbands and wives, spouses, and significant others is helping one another understand each other. That's some of the hardest things to do. I love Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages. Phenomenal book. Just to understand that we're all different. Well, we all know we're different, but that's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful thing that we're all different. It'd be a horrible thing if everybody was like Scott. Horrible. The world would be a horrible place to live if everybody was like Scott. But it's not. Thank God. He knew what he was doing when he created us. And so the ideal is like, I want to get to know you. I've been married for almost 31 years. I don't know everything about Gayla. I asked my dad. He's been married to my mom and dad. Been married over 61 years. I asked him, Dad, do you know everything about Mom? Oh no, son. No, I don't know everything about your mother. There's things I learn every day. Well, that's a wonderful thing. That's curiosity. And I think if we go in with the attitude, when it comes with relationships, that it's us. It's not you and me. It's us. We're in unity. And just like on anything that you're together, a team or a unity, is that, hey, I'm for you. I'm here for you. And if I do something, I say something, when it comes to communication and trying to connect with people, if there's something that is not communicated very well, or something you've taken that maybe you feel like I'm hurting you in a way, and I'm not trying to, then we need to connect. We need to have that sit down. We need to be able to connect to one another and understand one another to be able to grow with each other. And I think that's the key, is continuing to be curious, to learn each other, to offer mercy, to offer grace, and definitely offer forgiveness to one another.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. And it is like every day is a new day. I mean, like you've been married, you said
31 years.
31 years.
Yeah, my mom and dad have been married 61.
And then my wife and I, we've been married for 11. And it's still one of those, it's still like, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 11.
Oh, yeah.
I figured out it's like, well, Chelsea's different than she was on year 1.
Yes.
And, different than she was last week.
Yeah.
And, it's growth. And it's also not taking, it's kind of a way of not taking somebody for granted.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I have them all figured out. That's not the case.
No, it's not.
And so, because you probably don't have you figured
out.
No,
that's the point.
Right? And so it's like, I love how you said that. Like, it's us and it's each other.
Exactly.
And you can scale that up to as big as you want. Because from a team perspective, too, it's important for everybody to know that, hey, we're all in here. We're all working for the same reason, the same purpose. So, awesome. So, I think that I want to kind of bow it up here. So we talked a lot about communication, kind of understanding where you are from a leadership perspective, community, values, and how, with strong communication, strong community building, we can have stronger company.
That's it.
The relations.
Definitely.
And so that's what this podcast is for, for that type of thing. And expressing these ideas, getting them out into people's hands and their minds, and hopefully into their hands. And
That's
so, the Lead on Purpose event, November 14th. It's a lunch and learn.
Yes, it is.
11:30. Brandy Flanagan, Scott Brown. It's going to be an excellent event. Highly recommend it.
Definitely.
So right here in downtown Kilgore. So don't forget about that. Sign up. The notes are, we got links and everything. You can connect with Scott. He's really easy to get in touch with. And so that's it, man. Scott, thank you so much.
Aaron, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Appreciate it very much.